Disclaimer: the following video contains witty banter, fascinating and diverse books, exceptional volunteers, and one wacky librarian.
Hi, my name's Meredith, and I'm a librarian at the Cedar Rapids Public Library, and you are joining us for What Should I Read? This is a very special edition because we have with us here today Imani, Frank, and Sandy, the shining stars of our library volunteers. Now, I will say there are very, very many shining stars, but these people volunteered their time and their knowledge of books with us here today. So, without further ado, I would like to take a moment and introduce myself, and then we'll go around the room and you can meet your volunteers. So, my name is Meredith, and I work in the programming department, and I have been at the library for just about a year and a half. I grew up here, and then I moved away, and then I came back. And since coming to the library, I have been astounded and amazed and surprised by most everything that goes on here. It's a true story. It's a true story. So, if you don't mind, we'll go around the room and we'll start with Imani.
Hi, my name's Imani. I have been volunteering at the library for about a year now. And one thing that I greatly enjoy about the library, I have volunteered at my hometown library before, and I just love how this library is more than just books. It's also about the people, and it's like you could almost call it like a community center just because of like how many events that go on to help serve the community. And so I really enjoy the fact that this library does that.
Oh, that's lovely. That's so nice to hear. Frank, do you want to go ahead next?
Sure. I'm Frank, and I've also been probably just over a year volunteer at the library, and it has been hands down the most enjoyable volunteer experience I was ever been a part of. I got to spend some time at the DARE desk last year, and it was just heartwarming to sit there every day and watch the staff interact with everybody of Cedar Rapids. I mean, it really is everybody comes to that library of all different places, and just to sit in that foyer and watch how people are welcomed and helped and how they interact with everybody. And it was just heartwarming. And it proved to me, I've always been a library lover, but it just proved to me the quote that you hear everywhere, that a library is the heart of a community. And we got a great one.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. It's really nice too, especially now because we're not seeing patrons. And I'm sure as volunteers, you feel the same way. You know, there's just this whole, like, whether coming to the library is part of your routine on a weekly basis or if it's for special programs, but like, it's really hard to imagine a library without patrons. And it's a nice reminder that things will return to normal and that we'll be back again.
Yep.
It's true. Thanks, Frank. Sandy, how about you?
My name is Sandy. I feel like I've been a volunteer for a long time. And I think since they've been tracking hours, I think they have me in since 2013. So I've been there for a long time. I think what I think is amazing about the library is just all the opportunities there are to volunteer, whether it's like just dusting shelves, or whether you're volunteering at a program, or you're doing one time a week, or you're doing it just for one event. There's something for everybody at the library to do. I feel like I'm there all the time, and maybe I am. That's because I want to. and it's just, to me, it's just so fulfilling. I love volunteering at the library. And I also love all the friends that I've met and I've had all the years, and I also love all the people that I've met. I mean, it's just, to me, I don't even feel like I don't know, it's just fulfilling for me, being at the library. It's like home. It's my second home. I always tell everybody, I'm going to my second home now, so that's what I love about the library.
That's remarkable. And I just think it's so interesting, like, as volunteers, you're a direct reflection of our community too. You know, like you're so dynamic, you're so flexible, you're so willing, helpful, and caring and insightful. And it really is it like kind of puts me on my heels a little to think all over again about what an incredible place the library is. And I really want to thank you for nurturing that when you're there and when you're not. That's really remarkable. Oh, another reason why you're so important is because you read. I don't read that much anymore. I am the worst person probably to have volunteered to do a reader's advisory program, except I have enthusiasm and the willingness to better myself and read more. But, you know, who better to ask about books to read than bibliophiles? And that's right, that's you. So everyone was asked to bring a title with them today to recommend to you, our patrons of the Metro Library Network. And so, if you don't mind, we're going to start in the same order we'll go around. We'll have Imani introduce her book, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay. So I'm reading The Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio. It actually was written in the 14th century, and it's about 10 individuals during like the Black Plague who escaped to the Italy countryside to sort of like be away from like the town and everything during the Black Plague, and they entertain themselves with stories about humanity and other themes, and sort of to like distract themselves from what's going on and everything. And so they're sort of socially distancing before that vocab was even there. And so, yeah. It was actually a book that I read for one of my classes this semester, and that was in January before any of this craziness happened and everything. And so it's kind of weird that sort of came about, and then the news and everything. And so I ended up buying the book so that I was able to read the whole thing, just because you're only talking about like 10 of the stories during class. And I really enjoy it. So it's 10 people who share a story every day for 10 days. So 100 stories. So it's kind of thick. I'm here, so I have this much to go. So I only finished the first day, so the first 10 like stories. I also chose it because it's short stories, because sometimes it's like, I don't know, it's kind of nice to just be like, okay, I'm just going to read like a story a day to like, I don't know, just to encourage reading, even when it's like kind of hard to. And yeah, it's very just, I don't know, it's kind of just interesting just because it's like I'm socially distancing and reading a story about like 10 people who are socially distancing. I haven't really gotten that far into the book, and so I don't really have like a favorite part versus like an unfavorite part quite yet. But I know one of the questions is like, do you want it to end? And I kind of want it to, just so I can see what they do at the end, because it sort of seems like right now there's no end in sight, just with like what's going on and everything. And so it's like I kind of want to see like what did they do at the end of the 10 days, like as a little bit of a guide.
That is really interesting. I love that format too. I don't think I've ever read a story or a book that works exactly like that.
Yeah, it's very.
So
keep going.
So what are the ages of the people in the book? I mean,
they're all like young adults and everything. It's 7 women and 3 men, and so that they sort of just like find themselves. The story like begins like in the introduction of like the women just being like, oh my gosh, the plague is going on. You know, there's just a lot of just like despair happening in the world and stuff. And so it's like, let's leave this place and everything. And then they were like, well, we're 7 women, so we sort of need some like protection. And so then they find 3 guys, and they sort of just all like leave to the countryside. So they're just like young adults. They bring their servants with them. And so it's very interesting because it's like the people are like saying the stories and stuff, but it's also like you get like the people's reactions to like everyone's stories and everything. And it's all written by one author. And so it's like the author doing like these 10 like perspectives and these like different ways of telling the story.
Are they narrative voices? Sorry.
Yeah.
Narrative voice is very different.
I would say so. I have only read like the first day through, and then plus like some of the stories I've read in the class and everything. And so I would say like there is like certain like themes that they have, and like every day is like a different like topic. And so like through the days, like there's someone who's like in charge, and so then like they choose like the topic for the day. So the first day was just like a general like get to know each other day, and then day 2 is about happy endings. And so I'm excited to start day 2 just because, you know, who doesn't like a happy ending? Yeah, there's like, they sort of do have like different voices and everything.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
What class is it for?
It was for one of my honors classes, that it was like, we only met like once a week, and we like talked about like, we had like a select reading and stuff, and then like we spent like the hour like talking about our readings and everything. And so when classes went online, the readings turned into the honor system. So that was also part of it. I was like, I'll just wait until the summer and then I'll read them.
Priorities, right?
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
Chaplain, if you're watching this.
Oh, that's really funny. Well, I have another question then. Would you say that this is historical fiction?
Oh, yeah, I would say so. Well,
To that category, is there enough like information about the time period? Should we ask a history teacher?
I would say maybe it's a little bit more fiction than anything.
Well, do you like historical fiction in general, or is there a genre that you usually read?
I usually read thrillers, so like, you know, like The Wife Between Us, Gone Girl, and everything. And so that's usually like my go-to like genre and everything. But from reading the certain stories in class, it was just very like, I don't know, they were just like I don't really read stuff from the 14th century, so it was nice that like this was like stuff that was like interesting, but also like easy to understand. Like the translator is Wayne Rebhorn, and so he's really good at just like making it a little bit more like intelligible to today's like vocabulary and everything.
It was straight up written then.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's definitely not a book I usually read.
I wonder how they found that material. I used to be an archivist, and so I'm like, let's dig a little deeper. Right? Where's the primary source? It'll be in the notes, people. That's fascinating. I do, but you know, it's interesting. I say I don't read a lot, and I don't. But some of the books that I read over the course of the last year were told from different perspectives of several different characters, like They're There by Tommy Orange and The Other Americans. I can't remember the author's name for that. But I really like the idea, too, that you can kind of pick up a chapter and you can get immersed in a person. And if you put it down, you can come back and it's a new person. They kind of like encapsulated, but you still keep the story moving along. So if there's too long in between a chapter, you don't feel like you've lost consistency in the whole storyline because you finished with a person, kind of. I know, that's really interesting. What a great book to be reading right now. Right? Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Imani.
I'm kind of wondering what can happen. What can happen in 10 days?
Yeah, that's why. It's like, I don't want to like...
It's the Black Plague. So
it's not going to end well. Spoiler alert. It's like, is this a librarian joke when people ask, how does that book on the Titanic end? Well, not well. I don't know. And there's one other thing I was going to ask.
Do you normally read big books?
No. This is definitely one of the bigger books I have like read and everything. I also like told myself like, okay, since we have this like long duration of time, I was like, this is the time to read big books, just because it's like I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, I usually only read like, because let's see, it's about
Normal books?
1,000 pages.
Normal
and I
size
usually
ones?
read like 300-page books.
Yeah.
It's like 3 times bigger.
That's like a doorstop.
When I'm done, that's what it turns into now.
Exactly.
You're going to keep that because you're going to be proud that you read the whole thing.
True.
Right?
Yep.
Well, if you're reading a book and you don't like it, will you put it down, or are you a die-hard finisher?
I'm a finisher. Like, I have to like see it through. Because, like, I also feel like even if you don't like the book at one point, like, I don't know, it's maybe, like, you grow onto it, and, like, maybe you just, like, I don't know, especially for me, like, that's what I found. It's like, okay, maybe there's some, like, rough patches, but, like, I don't know, I'll go to the end, just see how it finishes, yeah.
I admire you even more now, Imani. Amazing. That's so fascinating. I appreciate that. That was a great book to add. All right, around the horn. Frank, you're next. What you got?
Okay. It's not a book that I'm currently reading, but it is the book that I recommend to everybody, and that's A Gentleman in Moscow, which also is could be a very timely story as well. If you are going to be quarantined or put under house arrest, this is the book for you. It's historical fiction, and I just love it because, I mean, I teach history, and so I've always been fascinated by history, and so I really enjoy historical fiction. And what I love about this book is, I mean, it's completely fiction, but the author will throw in at either like the beginning of a chapter or somewhere, you'll get a little blurb of the real history, right? And so it's a nice blend, and it doesn't take away from the story at all. So it's this fascinating story about the Count. I just know him as the Count Rostov, who was a former member of the nobility, and then the Communist Revolution takes place, and so he's uniquely put under house arrest in a hotel. And so the story is just an amazing story about his life, but what I love about it is just the cast of characters. These people that live in this hotel, and he has these, the chef that he gets to know, and oh my God, there's this part in there where they get some hidden ingredients or ingredients that they were never able to find in communist Russia, and so they get the ingredients, and these 3 men share a meal, and it's just written so well. Like, I wish you were there with them. And so it's a beautiful hotel. It's a great story. There's mischief, and there's mayhem, and there's a love story and thing, and there's hidden gold, and so it's a little bit of an adventure everywhere. So it's so well written, and I just love it. And it really, I look back to this book. This was one of those books that my wife's read first, and she said, "You're going to love this book." And I'll get to it. And she just kind of kept on me. She's like, "I think you should read this book." And so I don't even know when that was, a couple of years ago, but like, this book relit my passion for reading. Like, I needed this book to hit at the right time. And so it just, like, ever since I've read this book, like, I can't stop. I've just read, I just keep going. And I don't think, it's not that I'm looking for something like this, because I read just a huge variety of stuff, but like, this personally, I think for me, just like hit at the right time. And I think that's the power of books, right? Like, you just never know when a book's going to hit you at the right time. And so this is the one, and I got my whole family. I come from a big family, and I got my mom and all my sisters to read it. And so that was kind of fun for us to share that bond over
Family book club. Family book club.
Yeah, family book club. Absolutely. Yep. And so I have not read any of his other stuff. He's probably more famous for Rules of Civility, and that's on my to-read list. And I know he's got another one set to come out soon that might have an Iowa connection, the story. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, that's my book that I recommend more than anything. But I read a ton of different stuff as well. So I'm currently reading 3 books. I'm a huge audiobook person. I've come to just absolutely love audiobooks, and so I do an audiobook, and yeah, I'm reading all sorts of stuff.
Okay, so 3 seems like a lot. It seems a little excessive, like an overachiever. I mean, I've been known to do it myself. But do you have to read? Do you feel like you like to read and listen, whatever is happening at the same time? Do you like to shake it up so that you have something that's a little different or a lot different, or is it just whatever like triggers your fancy?
Yeah, well, I try to. Like, I used to read really boring books. I used to read a lot of nonfiction, and so I really try to spice that up a little bit. But what I usually try to do, if I'm reading a nonfiction book, then I'll try to do kind of a fun audiobook, like Imani said, like a good adventure book. I like that. I read a lot of Steve Barry's. He does the Cotton Malone series, which is just kind of almost like a Da Vinci Code type of thing, what's the Da Vinci Code, and what's the Nicolas Cage movie, the
National Treasures?
Yeah. So it's like a lot of books like that, like some cheesy adaptations of history. And then lately I've like tried to get myself to, read like true literature, like what won the Pulitzer Prize last year, and see if I can gut my way through. Some of them have been great. Some of them are just like, whew, that's a little much. So I try to challenge myself to do a little bit of different stuff.
Well, what a treasure as a teacher too, because this only like informs all sorts of different things. Yeah. But also, like, I am sure you just radiate this kind of enthusiasm and interest, and your students pick up on it. Yeah,
I hope so. Well, I know we'll probably get to it, but the other genre that I stumbled on is graphic novels.
God!
Graphic novels are amazing, especially, and this goes back to my thing. I didn't realize the amount of history or historical fiction graphic novels are out there, and like for me, it's just been, hey, let's get these into kids' hands. So yeah, it's been fun.
Okay, I love
your energy. I love your energy, Frank.
For as many things as you do, you would have to have a lot of energy. Yeah. Now, I have one quick question. So since you teach history, do you find that there are a lot of inconsistencies in the historical fiction that you read? Is that bothersome, or can you read over those things if they?
I can read over it. Sometimes it's fun, like to see if you can point it out, or whatever, And then, but yeah, it doesn't, because like you're telling a story,
It takes you somewhere else.
I would probably have a bigger issue with it if they try to pass themselves off as nonfiction and they're doing their revisionist history. That's where you'll really get my anger. But historical fiction, no, it's fun, right? I read one a couple of years ago, and the whole premise of the book was that Queen Elizabeth was a man. Right? The reason that Queen Elizabeth didn't get married was because she was actually a man. So, right? Like, it's a great story.
That's fascinating. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, my mind's just blown. That has put me on my heels as well. That's incredible. Well, Sandy, what do you have to recommend today?
I'm going to recommend a book I read about a week and a half ago, and I just love it, and I've been telling everybody else about it, but it is, it's backwards for me. It's okay here. It's called Clack When You Land, and it's a YA book. It's a realistic fiction, and I really loved it. It's written in poem. So it's written in verse, and I have recently started reading books in verse, and I'm just amazed at how much the story can be told in verse and get to you. I mean, just the emotions that it can bring out in you, and the story it can tell. And the story's about two girls, and I don't want to give too much of it away, but the story's about two girls. They're 12, I think 12 and write it down. But anyway, they're two young girls, and the one girl doesn't see her father except for only in summertime. So when she goes to the airport to go get her father, she learns that there's been a plane crash, and her father has perished in the plane crash. And then the story is told by another girl, and she gets called to the office. And when she gets to the office, her mother is there, and her mother's in the office, and her mother tells her that there's been a plane crash, and her father has died. And yes, and then in your mind, you're going, what is going on? And kind of find out they both have the same father. And you're like, you know, and then as you're reading the story, it's like the girls don't know anything about each other. They didn't know. And then you're thinking, do the mothers know anything about each other? And the story is the poetic lines in the story, the emotions that you're feeling are just like, you know, devastating, and the families' lives and how they're both going through the two different feelings of, like, one is in the Dominican Republic and the other one's in the New York City, and how they're dealing with it, you know, how they're dealing with these feelings. And it's just so emotional that you're just like, you know, how they're going to have the burial and who's getting the body and all this. It's just, it's just so emotional that you just, I mean, there's times that you want to read right through it. You want to keep going, but yet you want to sit there and
Cry.
No.
Well, you don't want to cry because it's just like, you're just like going, you know, you don't want to cry because you're just like,
I'd cry.
I mean, it's just so sad, but it's so real that you could feel it, and you're like going, who got ripped off? I mean, to me, it's like, who got ripped off? Who didn't get the father? But they're both the girls are just like, I love my father. My father was everything to me, and they felt like their father loved them. And then she's like, my father loved me, and my father loved me. And then one chapter is about the one girl, and the other chapter is about the other girl, and they both feel like they both feel like they've been loved. And so when they finally realize that there's another girl, pretty much the same age as them, what do? What do you do?
Mm.
And you're just like, what do you do? If you're in that shoes, what do you do? You know, it was just like, I know, it's like one of those books that you're just like, what do you do at that point?
We're going to have to talk after this so you can tell me what happens. I cannot go through the rest of my day.
No, it was just so good that you're just like, and it's like, I mean, I copied some of the lines, but it's just like, one of them, I want to read some of it. It says, I am missing a math test, even though Pepe will get in a taxi upon arriving. I skipped my last 2 periods so I could wait in the airport. I'll make up the exam tomorrow, I convinced myself. Pepe's homecoming, for me, is a national holiday, and I rightly care that he's going to be livid. And then it goes on. It's been 9 months since last he was here, but it is a tradition he is on a flight the first weekend in June. And he feels like Taya and I have been cooking for days, seasoning and stewing goat, stirring a big pot of sancoya, all of Papa's favorites on the dinner table tonight. And my favorite line, and I wrote it in my review for this book, I said, for the rest of my life I will sit and I imagine what my father will say in any given moment, and I will make him up. His words, his advice, our memories.
That just sounds like a gut-wrenching
Yeah.
book, but it also sounds so good.
I know. It was so good. It was such a good book.
Yeah.
It was such a good book. And I guess she's written 2 other books, and I haven't read them yet. I have them on my list to read. And she won, prizes for her other 2 books. But her other 2 books are written in poetry, too.
That's so
And just the emotions.
I know I'm supposed to be facilitating this, but I'm just wiped out. I'm sorry. That's amazing. Well, you know what I was thinking too is like, I feel like every book applies to our current situation right now because it brings us to other people somehow, right? Like you get to know these characters and stuff. And it was just so interesting to hear about how powerful love is. Like this one father's love for both of his daughters made each of them feel like they were the only one, like the only light of his life, kind of, is what it sounds like. And it's like, that's such a powerful connection. And for him to be away from them for 9 months or 3 months out of the year, and they still have that inside of them. Like, if think about all the people we're distanced from right now and how that love still shines strong. Like, that's really incredible. Like, it's such a powerful thing and a powerful connection. And it really, as sad as it is because they lost that person in their life, it's really reaffirming of like human connection and the importance of it. And despite that distance, how it can still like remain for us. I don't know. That's like beautiful, Sandy.
I know. And the whole time I'm reading it, it's like there's really no winner in the book, and there's really no loser in the book.
Yeah.
Because you want them both to win.
Yeah.
And you don't want to read fast, and you don't want to read slow. You just want to get through it and see what happens.
It almost feels like you're swimming through it.
Yeah.
Like the language is so rich.
You just gotta.
And, if it's not densely written in chapters and paragraph form, like if like the physical way that the book is arranged isn't dense, then like you can kind of like move through those lines. And I don't know, that's incredible.
She had a lot of pausing in it. Like she would write some, and then she'd leave a lot of space and maybe put a period then. And maybe she'd write some words, and then maybe drop down and write a couple more words. So you're just like, okay.
It gives you those pauses itself.
I know. and you're already pausing, and they're like, oh, the author put a pause. Like, I know I'm supposed to pause. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Do you usually read YA, or is that something you read a lot?
I read a lot of YA. I do. I read a lot of YA.
That sounds really lovely. Yeah, that just sounds really lovely.
How did you find this book?
I blog a lot in book blogs, and I have my own blog. So I like a lot of people. Yeah, I know. And
you're so cool. You're so cool.
And it's been popular and stuff. I mean, it just came out, and so I thought I gotta get my name on there. But then, so then when the library opened and my name was on there, and I'm like, oh great, I got like.
Oh, that's so funny.
I pulled that one out. Like, gotta read that one first. So then everybody's like, Jen, you gotta get that one. I'm like, oh yes, you gotta read that one. That one's good. That was a keeper. So now I want to listen to it on audio.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Audiobooks. I think especially YA audiobooks, like I found myself kind of moving towards them. I mean, they've just really upped their game. I think that whole industry and they're just so good. Some of them are so good. They've been fantastic.
Well, like the diversity of voice actors that I've heard too. Mm-hmm. And, I think it would be so interesting to hear those different voices between you said New York and the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. On in particular, like they can transport you in ways that have just astounded me, to be honest. Like when you hear different voices, like I listen to the other Americans, and to hear like a 20-something woman talk and then go to a 60-year-old man, like it just was like, it's incredible. Right.
And I think in YA, because they know their audience, they actually spend more time trying to make the voice part of it. Because I've read some, adult books where it's just one person, and they're very good, but you're doing a female voice. You're a man doing a female voice. It's like, that's a little bit of a stretch. But I think on some of the young adult ones that I've listened to, they just know that, hey, we've got our chance, maybe we get this kid to listen to this book rather than read it. And so, but if we do a good job, then they'll pick the book up and read it.
Well, talking about like YA books and poetry, I really like Kwame Alexander. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he wrote The Crossover, which won a Newbery. And I read that book. We did a community read at one of the libraries that I worked at before. We did a community read for that book. And I read it, and I liked it. And then I listened to it, and I loved it. You know, the difference between like how it sounded in my head and when I heard it, because it's about a basketball player, a young man that plays basketball. And when that kid read that poetry, I could hear a ball bouncing in the back of my head. You know, you could hear like the words were made to go with a dribble. And it just changed everything about how I heard it. And it has like the dad in the story is into jazz. And so there were other parts where you could hear a different kind of syncopation in the words and or in the phrasing. And I'm like, all right, I'm sold twice.
Yeah.
I think the library has those too. I think our library has them. Yeah.
I don't know. Amazing. What an incredible diversity of books to have brought to the table.
Yeah, we've come from the 14th century to the most recent one off the
Off the shelf. That's amazing. Oh, I love it. I wish I could say something really thoughtful right now. I'm going to show you what I'm reading though. So this is what I'm reading. Binti, have you read this, anyone?
I've seen it, but I haven't.
Nidhi Okorafor, or no, Okorafor. I always say it wrong. I'm not going to lie. Okorafor. That's how you say it. Okorafor. But I was reading up on some Afrofuturistic books, and I came across, this is a part of a trilogy, and this is about a young woman who leaves her home planet to go to a prestigious university. She is the first person from her planet to be accepted even, and she has to leave behind her entire people and her family because she knows she won't be able to come back. And she goes, and she's at this university, and everyone perishes except for her in an attack, and she's set off on her own. And it goes from there. And something that it has to do a lot with identity, and it's a coming of age story, and it's adventure. I don't usually read science fiction at all. And I was just so captivated by this one young person. And I love how carefully the author has like written in all these intricacies. For instance, like this Binti is the character's name. She's standing in line. I think it was in like the cafeteria at the university. And someone comes behind her and is like, "What's with your hair? Is that a code?" And she's like, "It is what it is." But like her family, her people, like they braid their hair in a specific pattern so that it tells the story of where they come from, right? And they're like beautiful things that kind of mix technology and coding with like these like interesting origins and like things that take you so far back in history, right? That it was just captivating. So that's what I'm reading. And part of the reason, it's real small.
Oh,
I can really real small. This will not hold any doors or shut, but I'm going to finish it. That's important.
Yeah.
Right? Right. I'm usually a boring book reader myself, actually. I read a lot of nonfiction when I do read. Although, I have been reading more fiction lately, I guess. I'm going to give you one of my deepest secrets right now. All of Metro Library Network and the three of you joining me now. One day I was doing dishes and I was listening to an audiobook and I was just crying. I had tears pouring down my face. And my husband's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm listening to The Notebook." I've never heard that. I've never read it or saw the movie. And I walked right into it. Just like, boom. And I listened to the whole thing all at once. So I'm very open to reading different genres and all sorts of different books. There is no judgment from this librarian, that's for sure. When you saw the Notebook, come on. So good. So good.
Meredith, that's okay, because I saw the Titanic, and it was like when I was very young, and like we didn't learn about the Titanic yet, and like not too young, but it was still just like, I was just watching it because it was on TV, and then I saw the whole thing, and I was just like bawling, like, and then I saw that it was like a true story. I was like, what? What did this happen?
Right? I cry at a lot of books. I'm not going to lie. I never thought I was a sap And then, like, I don't know if it's because, like, after I had kids or what, I'll cry at anything. Anything. But maybe it makes me a better human. I don't know. Maybe it makes me more difficult to manage on a daily basis. Ask the people I live with. I don't know. But that's my deep, dark librarian secrets for the day. I don't really read that much anymore, and I love the Notebook so much. I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. So there you go. Well, with that, I would like to thank you all for joining us here today, right? I think that those are some incredible books to share with our fabulous patrons. And again, I'm so glad to share you, our amazing volunteers, with our patrons. There are so many of you behind the scenes and at the front line. I know that, Dare Desk and at programs, let alone roaming those stacks. And so thank you for everything. Soon we will be back together, right?
Great.
Until then, we're signing off with What Should I Read? And from all of us here at the Cedar Rapids Public Library, thanks for watching.
Bye.
In case you missed those titles, they were The Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio, A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Taulis, Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, and Binti by Nettie Okorafor.